Hello, welcome back to From Soft Serve, and we are in Dark Souls 2, the highly acclaimed action RPG made by From Software Incorporated. And I wanted to bring you back to the pre-release period for Dark Souls 2. It used to look a lot better, which let me explain. What we're seeing here is my second Sen mod, which is powered by the Dark Souls 2 lighting engine mod, which replaces the rendering engine completely of Dark Souls 2 and adds in modern features like better shadowing, volumetric fog, improved handling of materials, and most importantly, is it actually allows mod creators like me to make a specific mod powered by it, where I have upscaled basically all of the textures intelligently, carefully, and created new specular maps for most surfaces, added foliage, added new distant detail, enabled dynamic shadows for the entire world, made sure every bonfire was shadow casting, and toggled the volumetric light shafts, configured every single thing about every area, and you do that through the lighting preset menu that is available in the editor mode, and you control the screen space global illumination, which was another thing that DS2 lighting engine added. And you can toggle the skybox, and you can handle camera height and scattering and just so many things. You can even move where the sun is, which is incredibly cool. And let me make sure that I got that back on the right detail, or the right number. But yeah, you can basically toggle every single thing in the environment and how it looks and how it's loaded. And then the armors I've upscaled, and just so many things. So many things at this point that DS2 lighting engine allows me to do. But the key thing, the reason why I brought you here today, because I have brought you here, I called out like a siren song, and that's why you're watching this video. But specifically because of this video here that has lived rent-free in my mind for ever since I first saw it. Because my journey to the Souls games, I was late to it. I played DS1 in 2020. I had originally played it back in like 2013, 2014, tried, failed, gave up, and then didn't revisit it till the pandemic. And that period of time, I fell in love with DS1. Then I played DS3, and then I think I played Bloodborne, I think, and then Elden Ring came out, and then I played that, and then, well, no, I went back to play DS2 before Elden Ring came out, and then I fell in love with DS2, and I unfortunately was told to skip it, and I listened to that, and I'm here to tell you that that's wrong. The story is connected to DS1 and DS3. You will not understand what happens in DS3 if you don't get the full context, and DS2 is part of that. It just absolutely is. It does not have as many callbacks in DS3 towards DS2 that it does DS1, but I think that's because they had an overlapping dev period. But this video here is pre-release footage. And we have Tanamura, who was the main director on DS2. There was also the other director, Shibuya, the original director, and it was sort of a co-directing situation. And then with Scholar of the First Sin, and the DLCs, I believe those were Tanamura led. But I wanted to kind of scroll through here, and I hope I don't get DMCA'd for this, but let's do the little intro of this video.
Guys, Marty Sleeve here with IGN, and I am proud to present the gameplay reveal for Dark Souls 2. I'm joined here alongside Tanimura-san, who's the game director, and Tak Miyazoe, who's a global producer at Namco.
Okay, so there we have our introduction of who Marty is interviewing. And then if we scroll forward, this is actually Forest of the Fallen Giants in the pre-release footage. I'll make this a little bit bigger. was trying to make it a little bit smaller, that way I don't get DMCA'd as much. I'm stopping it, so maybe you'll see it's called Drop Stone of Healing. Actually, so after we go through this a little bit, because I don't want to show the whole video, but I want to show, like, here's what it looked like and where the differences are, because I've played this game for like 1,500 hours now. 1,651, most of that is modding. But with DS2 lighting engine, so much of it is being in the game still, so it's a lot of game time. But you'll see Drop Stone of Healing, not called a life gem. The UI was a little bit different. I don't know, it says L115. I think that's maybe the amount of torch time you have? I don't know.
We'll take a little bit of time to introduce Dark Souls 2 to you.
So you can see back here, they still used the same billboard style of distant detail, where DS1 did more of like low poly distant detail. So it was still like a geometric mesh. DS2 went, and understandably so, went towards using these flat like cutouts or alpha cards, but if they are blended within the environment, and you can see it's using a very heavy depth of field effect. That is a key component of it. Now you see here, there's absolutely nothing here, and that is changed in the final release, but there still is this portion that is left very much blank, so I try to fix that in my mod. But after we go through a little bit of this Forest of the Fallen Giants segment, of course I'm going to go back to the Second Sin mod that I've been working on for the better part of 2 years, off and on, between other projects, to show you where we're at. And I think we have surpassed what DS2 originally was designed to be, what was cut down because of performance and the restrictions of the PS3 360, and also just a really tough dev cycle. It was just really, from what we've heard at least, we don't have like perfect things, because the only thing you really can truly 100% verified like trust is if the people who worked on DS2 talked about it more, but they've generally not. But yeah, even here you can see versus the
improve in terms of Dark Souls 2 was the graphic quality of the game.
Yeah, you can see them talking about wanting to improve the graphical fidelity, and what they're showing here is very much beyond DS1 in a technical sense, in like the foliage that you have here, the shadowing, the handling of the light on the character, and it just what they're showing off here is also vastly beyond what we ended up getting in certain instances in the actual game. So let's skip ahead a little bit. Okay, so here we have the actual familiar bonfire room that I was just in.
Obviously for Dark Souls 1 and more so.
Now you can see how dark this room is. Even in my version, it's not this dark. But this is my North Star, as Dark Souls 2 was originally designed around this darkness and torches and light, and having to face off with that. And the release version of Dark Souls 2 really didn't have a lot of that left. There was still the torch mechanic in about half of the areas, and then half of the areas just didn't use it. And so you can really notice that, where they just stopped using the torch mechanic as much. But I love it. I think it was brilliant. And I think putting the dark in Dark Souls just makes perfect sense.
And get deep into the game emotionally and physically. And one of the things we thought was critical to that was the graphical improvements for more reality, more.
And so that's what you see in this pre-release footage, is a huge focus on heavy usage of ambient occlusion, depth of field, bloom, but specifically, and the most important, is shadow casting. DS1 did not have any form of shadow casting other than from the sun itself. That was it. DS1 had nothing else, and I've spent 2,500 hours working on DS1. I can tell you there is no shadow casting in that game aside from sun shadows, which is fine. The lighting is baked, and of course in my DS1 Remastered mod I have moved it all over to dynamic lighting with dynamic shadows and whatnot, because I'm so, like, I love that. Not to mention FromSoft games themselves moved to a dynamic lighting setup, where Sekiro, Elden Ring, Armored Core, it's not that they don't have baked elements to it, but they moved to just doing dynamic lighting and dynamic shadows, which I think was the right call. Also, I just spilled my soda a little bit, so don't worry about it. It's fine. And that has been where they moved, so it's fun to kind of apply that to their older games as well. And my upcoming DS3 mod that's going to be powered by DS3 Lighting Engine will do exactly the same thing. And I do plan to make a video showing sort of that, which you can even do without DS3 Lighting Engine, but it obviously looks way better in that case. But yeah, shadow casting is one of the biggest things that DS2 brought. Not only that, while we're here, if you'll notice,
The graphical improvements for more reality.
on the Faram set, right here you can see that they had cloth physics, which was another thing that DS1 just did not have. That if you go back to play DS1, like, your cloth just doesn't move. It's sort of, well, it moves a little bit, but it's not moving in a physical nature. It's just the animation of you moving your character, right? But in DS2 they were like, oh no, we'll actually do cloth physics, because why not? So you can actually see the cloth physics on
Right
the
now, where we're trying to
bottom part of the Faram set. I think it actually looks really fantastic. It holds up exceptionally well, and DS3 just took that to another level, and had even better cloth physics. And they've continued on with that ever since. But DS2 was the first one that actually had that. In Dark Souls Remastered, and maybe even in Prepare to Die Edition, that I'd have to look very specifically, but there is a couple enemies, like the giants in Anor Londo, that have a very rudimentary bone-based cloth animation system, but it's so bad that I can see why they didn't do it on the player character. Maybe it was performance related, I don't know, but yeah, it was not a thing. So you just generally, you just didn't get cloth physics. Of course, you'll see that the little reticle here is the different color, that there are mods to put that back. Let's get a little bit more footage. Let's mute it just because they're kind of doing voiceover, and well, that's going to conflict with my voiceover. I, of course, will link this whole video because it's fantastic, and I've watched it like 100 times at this point. So one cool thing, if we go back a little bit, back up into this room, you'll see, there was his face. You'll see this little railing here, and like the stonework. And if we go back to the current game that I have running in the background, of course they ended up changing it to this sort of like, there's like tree roots that are going through it, and like these little brick portions, and it almost looks as if this like exploded upward, or they like dug into this to create the where the ladder is, versus where this is very like perfectly built with the stones around here and the railing. So I actually think the final version fits into the world a bit better, but those are sort of the interesting things you can see going between the versions. And of course, this video is in 720p, so it can be harder to pick up on some of the details. But like here, you can see, I'm not sure this floor is actually using a normal map or a specular map at this point. It's sort of just there. And so, of course, in this updated version, you have roughness maps added to surfaces to give them sort of a little bit of specular effect. If they did not have a specular map, which many surfaces in Dark Souls 2 did not have them. They used them on a case-by-case basis because they had very limited video memory, so the less textures you could use on something, well, that would save you texture memory, so or video memory in general. So let's go down here. And like right off the bat, I mean, you can just see how dark and contrasty that they were aiming to have this game. And that was largely stripped out in the final version. So we're going to skip ahead a little bit because I want to get to this part. So let's skip to here, and then we'll actually go there in the game itself. So let's go down here. And so some of the difference you'll see here is because I'm not done tweaking my areas. Eventually I do want to bring all of the inspiration I can get from the pre-release footage, because here I would actually make it a little bit darker, which you can do fairly easily in Lighting Engine. If I pull up the F1 menu, and one of the quicker things you can do is go into the post-process settings. And you can kind of be like, okay, let me see if the exposure is too high. You can also increase the contrast of the image. And that can generally make it a little bit closer to that. You can get to the end result that matches the original beta aesthetics in so many different ways. But yeah, so here's the same portion. Ooh, actually I see a little bit of a shadow issue up here that I need to fix for my mod, so I'm glad that I'm making these videos, because these are the things that, and this is how you actually, a large part of working on this mod is the editor mode that allows you to go into a free cam, and then you can actually pick the different objects, mesh identifiers, and it will tell you their textures, and if they are shadow casting, if you want to override them to, oh wow, I actually had the doorway not set to be shadow casting. There's a lot of things I had looked over like that. I swear I had done it at some point, but they're telling me that I did not. But you can see as I go in here, the removal of baked lighting has meant that there are light leak issues that I commonly have to fix, that are very noticeable. Here you can see this mesh identifier. If I use the reverse bias option, it will flip it to where then it does block the sunlight. You have to be careful with that and use it on a case-by-case basis. And also I should say that baked lighting is fantastic and wonderful, and there's nothing wrong with baked lighting. We still use it in the industry all the time because it's fantastic and cheaper, and the only problem is it takes up storage space. So it's still kind of happening. Anyway, so here we are. Let's go back to the video. And you can see the player lantern here stands out a lot more than what is in my version. Now, part of that is actually because the player lantern is sort of like separated in Lighting Engine, so it's actually handled like on its own. As far as the intensity, it's confusing. So in each different spot of Dark Souls 2 that you walk, and this is the same with DS1 and like DS3, there basically are different areas where it'll swap to a different lantern style that they've set up in terms of intensity and distance. And so then Lighting Engine is taking that and then using this intensity slider on top of that. So there still will be differences between your player lantern brightness depending on where you go in the game. But this is sort of your slider of like, how bright do you want it to be relative to the original brightness, if that makes sense. So this is true, but you'll also see they have a different floor surface that is using a really nice normal map. You can get really good perceived depth off this floor. I would actually like to find this texture, because I'm not sure I've seen that texture. And even the stone floor, or the stair texture here is different versus what we got in the final game. The final game one, it ended up becoming like a blend of like the moss and then a little bit of the stone, but it is losing a bit of that sort of crunchy aesthetic. Now on this floor, I have enabled parallax occlusion mapping, and so you actually, that alongside the normal map, which the parallax occlusion mapping is stored inside of the normal map for Dark Souls 2 Lighting Engine, and so it's really easy to enable that. And so then, but yeah, you can see like how much darker these textures were and contrasty. Okay. You suck. I'm trying to make a video. How dare you? So yeah, you can see how much darker they were, but not only that, you can see just how much surface detail was on these walls and the normal mapping. But not only that, you can actually see on the side here, they had a specular map used on this wall and a lot of the surfaces, and that's very unusual, as in the released game a lot of them did not have that anymore. That was the first thing I'm sure that was that they got rid of when they tried to optimize it, right? And then you can see all of this extra stonework here around the the door frame. That is all gone, and it is now just a wooden door frame, which, you know, works, but is also massively more boring than what we got, you know, or than what we could have had. Dang, I didn't have a... Oh, no, I did have a thingamajiggy. Good. I'm glad I have torch time. How much torch time do I have? Okay, wrong one. I knew that. Oh, I have an hour? You'll love to see it. Okay, so here's the shadow casting that is present And here is the wall surface in my mod, which you can see that the specular map has returned, or in this case, a roughness map. And I think it still actually looks fantastic. And let's light this up, actually. So we can get the look of, and you can see that the shadow is hitting the door, and then it basically hits the environment. And then let's go back to here. You can see in this, they did not have the brazier, I think that's how you say it, shadow casting itself, so it doesn't actually have a shadow beneath it, but I have turned that on in my mod, so you actually get the shadow from the brazier itself. And so little advancements there, but you can see this actually has a lot less saturation, but high in contrast. So I'm very inspired by this, but let's go in here. You can see the video is having a little bit of compression issues, weirdly enough, but you can see, just look how dark that is when you step in there. And this should be true here, where this switches to a new setting, which darkens things massively. But the benefit to having the dynamic lighting, and you actually get the volumetrics. In this case, the volumetrics are actually going through the wall here, so let me fix that. That's actually nice to know, because it turns out I had this individual door frame not set to be shadow casting. So by default, when you turn it on to be shadow casting, it does not do local shadows. By default, it is set up to do sun shadows, which it doesn't need to do sun shadows because it's inside of a building and the building is already casting that shadow. But if we turn on the local shadow casting, well, actually, in this case, it does the same between both. So let's add that. And it says the door is also, but the doors are already shadow casting. Ooh, I forgot these little bricks as well. Man, I missed a lot more of these than I thought. That's a shame. That's a shame. Ooh, and the stairs? That's where I'm like, Dark Souls 2 lighting engine, I don't know. Are you gaslighting me? Because I feel like I did this. I feel like I did this. You know? But maybe not. My memory is pretty terrible, so like, it's very much possible that I just did not at all do this. But anyway, let's save that, save those little changes. And maybe it's going through like the crevice here. But anyway, let's go down here where you can see it gets a lot darker. And now we enter this area, the legendary spot in this video. One of my favorite parts of this 12-minute video is, so they go back up and then they light the torch, which that's it, one of my favorite mechanics in the game. You can see we still have a specular map. We have incredible, I think we even have parallax occlusion mapping going on here. Like they were popping off with the surface detail here. Yes, it looks a little muddy. The texture like resolution isn't terribly high, but in terms of what you're getting on each surface is so much more than what we got in the released game. So then let's go down here, and you can see it's obviously pitch black because they have not lit any of the torches yet. We have the dogs. You can see how the shadows are dancing off all of these objects, which is something that DS1 just did not have, because also it didn't have a torch. You had like the light spell, and you had your little skull lantern, but none of it casted shadows, because the engine quite literally did not have that functionality. And so Dark Souls 2 was a massive improvement. And even in the released version, the torches still cast shadows on a good amount of things. Not as many as they do now in the modded form or in this pre-release form, but it still casted a lot of shadows. So this is what they were going for. And like, look at how the shadows are dancing off him and they break the pillars. Like, just, it's incredible. Now, this is another instance where, obviously this is back in like 2013, 2014, and they did not have volumetric fog, right? So when you go to my version, using DS2 lighting engine, volumetric fog is what is illuminating. That's what you can see, the thickness in the area. And I'm still not fully happy with, 100% happy with like how it looks, because I think this goes to another preset, which is Forest of the Fallen Giants Dungeon. And this is where I think I can definitely toggle up the actual like bloom mix. I think that's a good thing to sort of boost the bloom a bit. And then also, oh, the exposure max. Oh yeah, I had that busted. Ooh, Yeah, that's me. That's where, like, I think the exposure should be very low. And you can do this, like, per area. And that's what I really love. And so, like, if you really want to get it closer to the original, you can kind of do this, right? And this is with it lit up. So I want to get to the point in the video where they have lit some of the torches. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I've seen this so many times, I should remember, but it's just so atmospheric. Like what they were doing with the surface quality here and the textures. Like, it's very crunchy and sharp, but that's always been FromSoft games. They tend towards very sharp image. We have a little bit of grass down here, rubble, boxes, and this is where the person actually gets killed down here. To show the punishing nature of Dark Souls 2. Specifically, if you just keep walking into an area and think that you don't have to kill the enemies, you are going to hit a point where the game goes, no. Oh yeah, we got the little skellies. And so now you can see the skeletons are casting shadows. Everything in the environment is casting shadows. I need to double check that just to be sure. Because as we know, I apparently forget a lot of things. But I think Dark Souls 2 has finally lived up to that original pre-release graphical quality. And obviously I would say in many ways it has exceeded that. As you'll see in this instance, the box here is actually having a nice specular response from the nearby light, and then the casting of shadows on everything. Let's hit, let's make sure. Yeah, this is already set to cast shadows, I believe. Or maybe not. Maybe it wasn't. Some of these may not have been. So that is a thing where Lighting Engine will, by default, because DS2 had this as well in the release version, where if there were too many, this is through modding that I figured this out, that at a certain point it would cut off the shadow casting, because it would say you have too much. DS2 Lighting Engine is very intelligent, where it will basically cull extra shadow casting sources at a distance, and then prioritize the nearby ones to the player. And that's how it should be, right? Like, that makes a ton of sense to me. Yeah, this one I already overrid. I think maybe I forgot to override that one and make sure that it was shadow casting. Let's pick this one. Oh, really? Did that one also not? No, I think they already were. I'm just doing the override, which then undoes the shadow casting and then redoes it. But there are instances where a lot of them were not set to be shadow casting. And obviously the shadows look fantastic. And the mixture of the roughness maps, texture upscaling, it all comes together, right? I've been working on this mod on and off for like 2 years, so that is to be expected, where a lot of it just took time. Ooh, I forgot. Or no, did I? Okay. What did I pick? Sometimes the actual like capture thing is a little wonky with picking items, but I think that's pretty understandable with as complex as what we're doing here by allowing me to free cam out and see everything that's rendered, and then you can always hit the snap to game camera to come back. And yeah, so let's go back to the video for a second. And okay, so that's where they're going back to that area, I think. This area is pretty similar in terms of like overall geo. Like, they didn't change a decent amount of this on the interior, but you'll see there's like some railings there. And then in this case, you can actually open the gate from this side, where in the release game, you have to open it from the other side. You can see it looks like OSHA was here, because look at all these railings that do not exist in the final game, like, at all. So let's actually like go back. Okay, I'm actually really happy with how this looks. Ooh, I don't know if that crate is casting a shadow, actually. That might be one where it was just simply not. Oh, I had equipment selected. That's why I couldn't pick anything. Oops. Oops. Okay, well, let's turn on shadow casting for this stuff, because I probably forgot to do that on a certain amount of these surfaces. Ooh, did forget that one. Okay, well, yeah, you can see. So if we zoom in here and I turn off the highlight selection, you can actually see the dynamic shadow being added. And that is just really satisfying and cool for me. I've never gotten tired of the sort of neuron activation meme where I go, oh my god, it just turned on the shadows, and that looks sick as hell. So for dynamic objects like this crate, we don't want to add it to the shadow map because it is a dynamic object that will be crushed, right? Presumably. And so if you add it to the shadow map, you don't want it to be casting like a... You want the shadow to go away, right? So you can do selected override, and then you can go inside this menu and then hit shadows from scene, and you'll see that now we add a dynamic shadow to the crate as well. And I believe, if my lizard brain is correct, that when I hit this, the shadow should disappear. And it looks natural enough. So it's basically casting a shadow on that version of the object, because whenever we hit the object, it will then switch over to its broken state, which has like a physics response, right? But then that other version that we had shadow casting is no longer there, so the shadow disappears. So that's how it should work. It's not perfect, but I think the effect is pretty convincing. Oh yeah, I forgot you could summon Big Dog. Big Dog weird face guy. I love the NPCs. Okay. Oh, he does the light spell. He's the goat. He's the goat. I think this honestly looks incredible. I'm so happy with where my mod's at right now. Okay, yeah, let's go back up here and I'll show you the differences in the final game. So you can see the railings were taken out. OSHA was fired. So they got rid of all the railings. And then there was like this other pathway that was here that is just completely missing in this version of the game. And you can see just how dark this still is. Oh, and then this goes like downstairs. Okay, interesting, interesting. Yeah, like just look how dark this is, and like the wooden planks and all the stuff on the side, like they were, oh yeah, this is where they go to like a totally different area that that ended up going like this way, and then this ended up just kind of being a room, and then you have like the more simplified bricks, and like so there's still like geo work that I want to do on Dark Souls 2. Currently I don't have a way of editing the Dark Souls 2 meshes in Blender. I am not cool enough or smart enough to write a Blender add-on that would handle all of that. So until Blender Soulstruck gets updated to do that, and then I will go ham and I will edit every possible model in Dark Souls 2, because there's a lot of mesh holes and things I need to fix that I simply do not have the ability to fix without being able to edit the meshes in Blender. Like that's not something I currently can do. Also, I love the backstabs. I kind of went ham on the volumetrics here, just a little bit. Let's see where we're at in the video. It'd be funny if this video, just, you're not able to monetize it at all, which, like, is fine, whatever. See, look at that specular map. It's crazy. That's so glossy. That's so cool. Yeah, and it's really cool. Whenever you come out here, you don't see any sort of transition. And that's because, of course, all of the lighting there was baked. Ooh, another shadow problem. Hey, I was not planning on attacking that guy. Alphys, you're going a little too ham here. And you can see there's a big lighting shift here, and that's because I'm using dynamic lighting, and it can be hard to make that transition because the shadows quite literally move. They have different X and Y coordinates. I could theoretically make the direction the same, because this is considered the pursuer version or section of Forest of the Fallen Giants, and that uses a different lighting setup. So it is a hard thing to balance the sun direction of the Pursuer Arena versus the sun direction of the rest of Forest of the Fallen Giants, which are separate. So baked lighting doesn't have that issue, because you just walk into the area, the lighting is baked, it's fine. So that's certainly a benefit of baked lighting. Dynamic lighting, especially when you don't have like a time of day system, you kind of do have these juts to a different time, and you can try to hide them, but it is difficult. Yeah, you can see with my roughness maps, I have brought back some of that glossiness, that overabundance of specular that I think the modern FromSoft games are very, 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 they don't like doing it. Let's go back to this actual sword structure. And another difference you'll see between like the pre-release footage and what we're seeing specifically here, not anything to do with the release footage or the release version of Dark Souls 2, but in this case, you will notice that there is much better indirect lighting in my version because it is using the SSGI and the world sort of shadow map style sky shadow system of DS2 lighting engine, and basically it's just much better rendering quality, and so you're going to get indirect lighting that's better. And back here they didn't have the GI implementations were much more nascent, right? And so that's why you get a lot of these contrasty areas where there's just no light at all, despite there of course being ambient light, but the baked lighting that they did, it just didn't really have much. And then you'll see back here you have more of those sort of like alpha style cutouts that I think look quite good with the they looked really good at like 720p or 1080p plus depth of field, but once you go to higher resolutions it starts to come apart a little bit. The facade breaks, and you know, so it's still kind of like that, except you have the castle thing, like you have the shadows coming off that. Volumetrics are a little strong currently. Oh, Alphys, no, big dog, no. But with dynamic shadows, the benefit you get, obviously, is you have the actual giant sword thing casting a real shadow onto the environment, and you can see your player shadow casting. And this guy's AI just completely, he said, I don't care anymore. So there's still a lot of mesh work I want to do in Dark Souls 2, but you also have a really good auto exposure system that Dark Souls 2 lighting engine uses. So you go out to this blown out environment and it adapts, and you can still see most things. I'm okay that you don't have perfect visibility because that's obviously core to the original like Dark Souls 2 ideology of it being exceptionally dark, or I shouldn't say ideology, but visual design, right? So let's switch to this lighting param. You still have the rubble pile. I'm still not happy with like certain surface quality things and overall contrast. That I'm working on. It is hard to fully replicate it because you're going from a baked lighting setup and then you're trying to essentially replicate that baked lighting setup, which I heard you running. I heard you come all the way from that distance, which is crazy, big dog, which is crazy. One thing I want to show is the last giant room. I also, it's funny, I haven't really mentioned that in this mod, I have touched every area in the game multiple times, tons of times, 100 times, who knows at this point. So you can expect really good visual quality through, I would say, all of the areas at this point. It's a huge upgrade over the base game. And I think it's the perfect time to jump into DS2. I mean, I think it's been the perfect time, but the modding scene for Dark Souls 2 is so expansive, and there's so many options, my mod just being one of them, right? But yeah, I still want to replicate this look even more, because I think it looks awesome. And it is meant around 1080p, admitted. Oh yeah, this is where they then go to Aldia's Keep, which looks so sick. This, I haven't really done any work on replicating this look, because this looks incredible. Like, just like the shadows you have here, like this isn't even, these aren't baked shadows, like these are actual dynamic shadows, because you can see your player walking through them, and then you know, you actually have the shadows dance on the player, where when you have baked lighting, that's not the case because it's all baked, so it's not actually hitting your dynamic character as you're walking around. This just looks incredible, like just incredible art direction and surface quality. And you can even see, I think they have the specular here turned on the character a little too high, because you can see their material handling of like this cloth is almost as if the cloth was like completely wet. So that we can fix with the better material handling that DS2 lighting engine you know, has. But even with this shading model, you could presumably fix that. But those are small things that my mind is is focused on. Actually, yes, we should go to Aldia's Keep, because yes, that is part of this video. And I am happy with Aldia's Keep, how it looks in my mod right now. I'm pretty happy, not 100%. I'm still tweaking, still fixing, but let's go there. So you can get a sense of at least, well, we're going to start outside, and then we'll go inside the building. And on its own, I think it looks great, but I really want to like 100% nail how it looks in the pre-release footage here. So obviously we have a lot of foliage added, which is cool. Out here we have some really, really strong volumetric light shafts. You have Dragonland Castle up there in the distance. We have parallax occlusion mapping, roughness maps, all the good stuff, all the stuff that you would expect. We do have a lighting transition in here that I don't like, and I will be fixing, but I've currently not fixed it. It happens right here, and you definitely notice it. It's not great. But if we go in here, you'll see we have these very strong light shafts. I wanted that to be the focus. You do have the dynamic shadows, which do dance on the player, but they don't dance on the player as much as I would like. I do think you obviously have a big improvement in overall surface quality and specular response. And the shadows that are coming from the actual furniture here, I think looks fantastic. So I still think it looks amazing. Like, I think this is probably one of the better looking spots in my mod with everything that I've done. But the North Star is definitely the pre-release footage. I love that they have all these dev messages that are like, do not do it. Do not do the thing that you are hoping to do. And it's like, yeah, but what if I did it anyway? What about that? Another thing about the pre-release footage is I can't wait until someone releases the footage. Or releases the beta build, because it's out there somewhere. Someone has it. So really quickly here, we can actually go to Aldia's Keep, and the first thing I'll look for is contrast, because I do have the contrast set just too low for a lot of the areas. And I also have the bloom not correctly set up, and the exposure, I think, I have wrong on some of the areas as well. Like the bloom mix is too low for a lot of things. So by raising it up, you do sort of darken certain things, accentuate the bloom. I also have the SSGI turned too low for this interior room. Like, I already just right off the bat, like right off the rip, I can see the things that I don't like. And I hadn't gotten to this area in my most recent update, but already I like it more. And then beyond that, these are brighter in the pre-release footage. And so you can actually make the sun that comes in much stronger, or moonlight, or whatever the hell we would call that, to match better with the pre-release footage. And then you have your secondary lighting, which handles a lot of the indirect light, and you'll see a lot of that has just been centered back here. But I dial that in as well, and then just a bunch of stuff. And then I added a roughness map onto the actual skeleton itself. And let's go back to the pre-release footage, because yeah, it's still really bright, and they have different shadow casting. I'll have to mess with, that's the really fun part about Lighting Engine, is you get to do it all while you're in game. So here, it looks like they have it focused a little bit more in the center. And so you can actually, so I'll just remember that's 240. And a lot of it was just trying to align with like where this was. And so let's change the secondary second light ordinance. Because anytime you affect the main light, you want to also adjust your secondary light, which then handles a lot of the indirect lighting. I'm still not totally happy with the volumetrics here, so I'm going to mess with that a little bit more. But I definitely want to bring it closer to the pre-release footage in any way possible, because I do think that's the best that Dark Souls 2 has ever looked visually, and we've been kind of chasing that for 10 years, realistically. Like, this abject darkness is just, that is DS2's aesthetic and what it was meant to be, and I want to bring this back. I want to bring back the darkness. That sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, but like, just look at even in these scenes here, you can actually see such a great, like, saturation. to the lighting and the, like, it's just, oh, and the contrast. It's so tasty. This is just, now this is basically the same. That's like the same textures. And then they go into the big empty room, which interestingly has like a Ferris Lockstone thing, like set off from the wall itself. So if we try to go up to that spot, we'll see how it looks here. Ooh, good, I got rid of the big guy. No, I didn't get rid of the big guy. He's still here. Well, you suck. Let me go up the stairs. Got caught on the dragon bone there a little bit. Like, I think this spot right here is like one of the best spots visually in my mod. Like the shadow casting we're getting on the player, the handling of the new spec maps on the armor, like the shading, the ambient occlusion, like just all of it comes together to create like an incredible looking area. So I'm very happy with Aldia's Keep. I just want to always make sure I get as close to the pre-release as I can. Yeah, this brick looks... What's up, Big Basilisk? How's it going? Okay. And then we go in here. Yeah, you can see that's about the same. Let's open this up. Okay. And then let's see the Ferris Lockstone on the right. And you can see here it's actually just like a part on the wall. And in the video, they kind of like, it's its own freestanding thing, which I assume was just for testing, right? Like, this wasn't their... Also, they called it a magic stone, which is very cool. And then you can see it lights up the area. So that stayed in the final version of the game. And with the way I have it set up with the roughness maps, I think the walls look really nice. I think, of course, you get the little paintings here. Oh, I think I'm using a really weak weapon. Oh yeah, well, it's like a +7. I haven't fully upgraded this weapon yet. And then if we go here, this is all just kind of the same stuff. And then, oh yeah, they have Dragon Aerie, which is another area I need to like update. We're gonna warp there because this looks incredible. Like, a lot of it is the depth of field, but even the lighting and the shadowing, like the fact that the dynamic shadows from the dragons are hitting your character, like, that's incredible. And they kept most of this. The actual castle design looks much different. Because in this version, the sun is actually coming from the back. And so you get the castle being shadowed, draped in the shadow. And that is not at all in the final version. The final version, they moved the sun to where it was hitting the castle, which maybe it could just be an artistic thing, right? Where they were like, oh, we think that looks better, which, sure. So let's warp to Dragon Aerie real quick, because I did do an update on that very recently in the version you can download. And I think it looks great. But once again, I would like to replicate how it looks in the pre-release footage. Which may not be to everyone's taste, but it is the aesthetic that I just am so in love with. And we didn't get that, you know? So here we are in the Dragon Shrine. And here we step out, and you can see huge improvements from even the pre-release footage of like parallax occlusion mapping, the normal mapping, the roughness map, the specular maps, the tessellation added to a lot of the meshes to where they have added complexity, and obviously like it all comes together. The volumetric lighting I think helps a lot. I'm not completely happy with it. There's kind of like that there's a couple distant things that I think don't really look that good, and it might be a lot issue. Man, in the distance, that just does not look good. So let's go up here. Oh, I hate these guys. Okay, you're dead. I love that they have zip lines, by the way. That's so weird. So if we free cam for a bit, there are mesh issues like, oh, this is where I was trying to cover up the low poly nature of something. Yeah, I didn't do a very good job of it, I will admit, yeah. I need to have a higher poly mesh or make them smaller, because from a distance this doesn't actually look that good. But I'd say it looks better than, I don't know where it was before. I can do a better job of that. That is not ideal. But you get the bloom, the light shafts, the shadows dancing from the dragons, so like that's the vision. I still need to make this a lot more like the There's also a little bit of a flicker. I don't know what that is. I think that's the distance of the shadows or something. There's a certain distance at which DS2 lighting engine has not picked up on the shadows yet, and it kind of flickers. But I have hit the max distance of DS2 lighting engine shadows. So that's an instance where a baked shadow is quite nice, because you could just render it from a distance. Also, I'm gonna run! And I know you guys are gonna hate me for running, but I don't care, because I just want to go run through the area and how beautiful it looks. Ooh. Like, look at that shot. That's a sick shot. Oh, actually, hold on. Oh, are you not gonna come up here? This is it. Oh, are you guys cool? I thought you would keep chasing me. So actually there's something funny that happens with this mesh, is you can see the tessellation increase as I get closer to it. So that is because of a, let me open up my game map object, or game map editor. We pick this, and I forgot to increase the max distance on the tessellation. So it just looks better from a distance, and you don't notice that. That is the other stuff that I'm doing. So now that should just be at a greater distance, and you no longer notice that that's happening, but it is a higher poly mesh. Ooh, see the auto exposure system putting in the work. Ooh, okay, he didn't want me to, ooh, ow. Ooh, actually, let me go beat this guy, and then I'll show you another cool feature of DS2 lighting engine from the editor perspective. Ooh. Okay, well that was on me. That was on me, I admit that. I admit that was my fault. I have remade the spec map for these guys, and I think they look incredible. Okay, you're done. Now, if you look at these shadows, you can see they're filtered quite heavily because there's the distance to the actual light casting source, and that's how you get into the PCSS shadow quality setup of soft shadows, right? But with DS2 lighting engine, you can actually, I am in control of that. So I can set it back to 1, which is basically it doesn't do as much of this soft shadow filtering. It does obviously some, right? It's still PCSS shadows. But you can actually make them look more filtered, which I think in certain circumstances looks really good and more natural, right? So let's hit save all atmospheres. And so basically as the sun hits that, and then it becomes more blurry, essentially, less sharp, becomes unsharp. Now this is a current issue, is this specific mesh is odd, and so you'll see that the sky lighting system does not like this mesh, but that is a known issue that should be handled or fixed eventually. But yeah, so there's Dragon Aerie, and let's now go back to, which in this video I have not gone back to at all, because unfortunately the pre-release footage does not include Majula, which sucks, because I would love to see the earlier form of Majula outside of like concept art and whatnot. But I'm very happy, I'm the most happy with my Majula, which I would arguably say is probably like one of the most important places to nail in Dark Souls 2, because you will be spending time here, and you're consistently coming back here. And so this is what Majula looks like in my Dark Souls 2 lighting engine mod called Second Sin. And I don't know why I'm saying that now, as if you have not, I have not said that prior, but I added all this grass, I added extra trees, more grass, foliage, rocks, distant detail, and all the shadow casting related stuff. And so there's just been so much work put into Majula, and I'm really happy with how it looks. I think the grass adds a lot. I have been pruning back the grass in a lot of spots. I've been undoing my previous grass work. There's been a lot, but I think it looks incredible. And that is really, you know, the fact that Majula already looked amazing, right? So this I think is a really good example. Is you're walking out from things betwixt, and you have this moment, which is the God tier Majula moment of, oh my God, the most beautiful spot perhaps ever put into a video game, and I'm happy to improve it in any potential way that I can. Also, I've almost recorded for an hour, so that's crazy. But really, I just wanted to talk about this mod and my love of Dark Souls 2, and specifically the pre-release footage, which I hope you enjoyed those little snippets of looking at the pre-release, because I think that Dark Souls 2 just had an absolutely fascinating dev cycle, and controversial in some ways, of course, with the downgrades that we did end up getting with the release version. But I think a lot of people put malice behind that, when it's like, well, they obviously had to optimize for PS3 and 360, and while the pre-release footage seemed like it ran at an okay-ish 30, there were reports of other people that were playtesting or something, and it was not great. So, like, optimizing for performance makes sense, and they were doing things that were definitely much more advanced versus Dark Souls 1. And FromSoft has never been a tech powerhouse, so the downgrades I think make sense. But that is my North Star of this mod, is to have Dark Souls 2 make it as beautiful as I possibly can, and I am only using original assets, modified of course. Like this grass is from this game, the textures are from this game, they have been upscaled, the spec maps are based on the albedo maps that are from this game. And I think, and all the rocks are from this game. So I think there's a certain coherency that you get when you just use base game meshes. Now, that's not to say that someone could remake this with all new meshes and it wouldn't look amazing. Of course, I think it very much could and would. But I think there's an accuracy and honor to, I don't know, there's something in my brain that makes me really happy to work with the existing assets and do as much as you possibly humanly can with that, and see where it gets you, which thus far I'm exceptionally proud of this mod. And I think if you want to experience this for a first playthrough, that would be a good option. I would not begrudge anyone by booting up the unmodded game, of course, as that's the game I love. You can play this mod online. It is using DS2 lighting engine, so Dark Souls 2 doesn't even know that it's happening. And so you can play online just fine, and yeah, I think you'll have a great time. I think it's the best time to jump into Dark Souls 2 since it launched. I think we're at a point with 10 years on for both versions. Dark Souls 2 is aging like fine wine. Fine wine, in many ways. I think there's a lot of appreciation that's going around for it. And I think there's a positive upswing that we're finally reverting this notion that it's a terrible game or it's the one you should skip. And those were all minority opinions, and they always have been, but they were blasted to such a loud a loud volume, that it is seeped into the minds of people who were thinking of playing these games after Elden Ring, right? Like just today I had someone ask me, oh, should I skip DS2? I started with Elden Ring, and I'm really enjoying DS1, but like I've heard that DS2 is terrible and awful. And you know, that just honestly does break my heart. Like, that sucks. Because I was one of those people that I skipped it because people told me it sucked. And then I got my hands on the sticks, and to be fair, I was not like immediately 100% loving it for the first 5 hours or so. And then it just absolutely clicked, and I love it, and I've never looked back, and I've only loved it more since then. Even like 1,600 hours in, I love this world. I think it's the most alive feeling world in the Dark Souls trilogy, which is not to say one's better than the other. I think Dark Souls 3's world is less alive for a very specific reason and thematically. Dark Souls 1, I think it was right after the main events like happened, or within a certain period of years or decades or whatever, but like it felt very frozen in time. And Dark Souls 2 feels very much more expansive, and it's such a larger game that Dark Souls 1 has, and perhaps in some negative ways, you know, it could be a quantity over quality thing in certain cases. I would freely admit. But there are NPCs that are just on their own adventures, and they're not all talking about a like singular event. They sort of have their own things going on in their own stories, and it's not necessarily all about one cohesive thing that's happening. So I just think Dark Souls 2 is in this really interesting spot in the trilogy where it's essentially just, I see it as one of the cycles that happened between DS1 and DS3, and so it's not necessarily noteworthy in terms of like that, because the most important events that happened in this world would be the events of DS1 and prior, and then the events of DS3 for ending it. So DS3 or DS2 is in this interesting spot where it's not the end, it's not the beginning, it's simply what happened at some point during one of the thousands or millions of cycles, and we are just experiencing that in Dark Souls 2. And so maybe that feels less final or less important to others, but it very much has ties to the Dark Souls 1 story. You just have to find them, and it very much sets up for the events of what we see in DS3. So yes, there's my hour-long yap session, which I just love this game so much, and it's such a joy to work on, and I'm so happy that people have enjoyed my mod. And I've had people message me. My favorite messages ever is when someone says, your mod got me to download the game and revisit it, and I'm honestly enjoying it a lot much more now. Not because of like the graphics, but because of the game itself. And I think the viewpoint that if you go into something expecting to hate it, I think the chances that you end up hating it or looking at the things that you don't particularly like has a higher like level of hatred or whatever. I think that's more likely what's going to happen. But if you go in with an open mind and you go, look, I'm not expecting Dark Souls 1 again, I think you might be surprised at what you find. And I think you will see similarities to Elden Ring, because there are things that went towards Elden Ring, and we brought back power stancing, we brought back Pharaoh's Lockstones, and a little bit of the quirkiness and the freedom and the amount of armor and weapons and build variety. A lot of that, you can find those origins in DS2. So anyway, I love DS2. I think you should try it. And I think if you hated it in the past, give it another shot. And if you still hate it, that's fine. It's not a game meant for everybody, just like DS1 isn't meant for everybody. And there are people who hate DS1. And there's people who hate DS3. They're all three different games. And they play very differently. But I would say DS2 is the most different out of the bunch, for better or for worse, depending on the person. But I personally love it. I love it so much. It changed my life. Dark Souls 1 changed my life. Dark Souls 2 also changed my life. And I love DS3 as well. I think it's a great ending for the franchise. So there you go. I yapped for an hour. I love you guys. I'm excited to keep working on these. I am going to be streaming my mod work, as I said in my previous video. I'll tell you when the first day is for that. I don't have a perfect answer on that. It's kind of vibes based a little bit. But yeah. So I'll see you on the next video. My room is hot now, and I need to turn the AC back on, because apparently the world decided that we're going back to summer. I know it's not technically the start of fall yet, or whatever the fuck that actually starts, but it felt like fall there for a bit. And then the world said, gotcha, bitch. Suck on this. So anyway, see you next time. Thank you.